Welcome to Criminal Gines, a comedic true crime watch-along podcast where we watch Criminal Minds, all 15 seasons, and discuss the true crime that can be linked, however indirectly, to the episode. We're your hosts, Stacey Johnson and Veronica Shea, and this week we're joined by Bileko Wissa in discussing Season 1, Episode 19, Machismo. Anyway, Bileko, welcome to the podcast.
No, Veronica and Stacey, no, please, thank you for having me. I know Veronica, when we did that show, and you're like, I do this podcast, I was like, I think this girl's crazy because it's criminal. I was like, you know, I'm saying that right, but I was like, no, I'm all for it. So no, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, I figured you knew I was crazy because I'm a white woman. I'm a straight white woman. That pretty much.
You know, it
does it.
Stacey, they're trying to trap the brother. I'm not gonna yes and that. I'm not gonna agree.
Listen, you know what? I don't know what to say except for I'm
sad. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so we watched episode 19, Machismo. We were in rural Mexico, and in the cold open, we learned that this tiny town is ostracizing gay men and someone is killing elderly women. There were 12 in total. And the press are calling it a serial killer, but the government is disagreeing, claiming that serial killers are a uniquely American phenomenon. And this is a cultural bias that we've seen before because a lot of people believe that serial killers are only American. We also see it with people thinking serial killers are only white men or that they're only straight men, or that they're only men, even. In fact, there are female serial killers. So they have a suspect in custody, and they want the team to come down to identify him as the perpetrator and that this is not a serial case and was just the one-time killing. The lead detective who met Gideon at a seminar that Gideon gave on sexual homicide in Latin culture years before doesn't think that profiling will translate into Latin culture without the better understanding of Latin culture, right? Because the type of profiling they do is American. He says there's two key influences to this: the family unit and machismo, which as far as I can tell is toxic masculinity. But there is that stereotype that, you know, Latin men have that suave, macho.
Yeah, Rico Suave.
Yeah, thing going. So they go down to Mexico. They go to the most recent victim's house, and they find that this elderly woman had let the unsub in willingly and served him drinks before being stabbed to death. Because this is a sexually motivated homicide, they are looking for a heterosexual male. They go to meet the suspect in custody, and it's the victim's gay son who was kicked out of the house in the cold open. They're like, it's not him because he's gay, but they have to eliminate his boyfriend who's bisexual, so he could do a sexual homicide against women. The boyfriend tells them that he saw a heavyset social worker woman outside the house that day. Now, the team is also looking through other files on the 11 victims, and between the heavyset woman and Garcia telling them that one of the drinkers of the drinks left at the scene was a woman and one was a man, the team realizes that the serial killer is dressing as a woman to gain access to the house, going around as a social worker. Great. So they give their profile, and the police start rounding up trans sex workers. At this point, I would like to make a few clarifications because it's what they also try to do in the show. Cross-dressing is a paraphilia, and it's not dangerous. It's a sexy time thing. It is usually done by straight men. J. Edgar Hoover liked cross-dressing. I mean, he was a dangerous man, but yeah.
I always forget that. I always forget that little fact about Mr. Hoover.
Yeah, Mr. Hoover, yeah.
So cross-dressing, not dangerous. Transgendered people are not dangerous. And dressing as a woman to gain access is a ruse. So this person was neither a cross-dresser or a trans person. So I just want to say that. Okay, so there's another murder. It's been like 2 days, so this is pointing to extreme escalation. They hold a press conference and try to get women to come forward about sexual assaults committed against them. They can assume, because he commits sexual homicides, that he was once a rapist. Women start coming forward that they were raped by kind of the same dude, and they find out that he's a power reassurance rapist. He lacks confidence, and 4 of the women work at the same clothing factory. So they go to the factory, they find their suspect, but he's been on vacay since the murder that brought them down to Mexico. So they go to his house and they find his mother's skeleton in front of a TV, Norman Bates style. Love to see it. She's wearing trophies that he took from his murders. And there's photos of his rape victims all over the walls. So they realize that he's murdering the mothers of the rape victims in the same order of the assaults. This is a very organized killer. They rush out to the presumed next and final murder victims. Mm-hmm. And when they get there, they find the unsub has been beaten and castrated by all the rape victims. Love to see it. That's the episode. And no one's arrested. They're like, are you going to arrest the ladies? And the attorney general's like, for what? Protecting themselves? No, go home. And they're like, cool, bye.
Wow.
Come through, episode.
And that's the episode.
I have so many questions. Like, so what country this is based out of again?
Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's amazing. Like, the cultural, because in a way they feel like they're protecting their culture, right? By not making these assumptions, right? By like, hey, this group of people won't be a suspect, right? Because they want to protect their culture long term. But it's like anybody's capable of doing anything, right? It doesn't matter who you are. You could be trans, kid, baby, whatever, bi, whatever. Like a killer's a killer. Like that's uniform, Like it doesn't matter.
Well, we saw this with the Atlanta child murders. They all thought it was the Klan because a bunch of young black children were being killed in the South. So obviously the Klan. But the FBI came in and was like, our profile says it's a black man. And it was like, no, white people kill black people. Black people don't kill each other. And, so it was like, but this was also in the beginning of profiling, which now I don't think there would be so much pushback, but it's, I think every non-white and non-American culture finds it difficult to think that they have monsters too.
Right. Cause it's so interesting. Cause background, I'm from the Congo, right? So I
did not know that.
Yeah. I'm Congolese. So I can understand in Africa, because in America monetizes everything. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They make it entertainment. So especially, it is unfortunate, America knows how to monetize bad things. So example, this podcast, it's to be open about talking about crime. No, really, and the history of criminals and stuff like that. There's social norms in other parts of the world where I'll be why would you even talk about that? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Cause here's what's crazy. You guys being women talking about crime. There's it's two things. First of all, talking about crime, and then you guys being women talking about crime. It's you guys are messing up the family name. You know what I'm saying? You'll never find a good husband. You'll never, say all these weird social things. But it's no, bad comes in every shape or form. It doesn't matter. And then also people want to give themselves the benefit of the doubt that oh, my people wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? We wouldn't do that. We're better than that. You know what I mean? Those stupid Americans, they love murder. They love killing each other. It's oh, look at your own history.
Yes. Well, and they bring it up in the show, a couple different ones. The case they're working on specifically, that Latin culture thinks it's an American phenomenon because of the destruction of the family unit. We have a lot more broken, quote unquote, broken homes than Latin culture. And they also brought up Andrei Chikatilo, who is a prolific Soviet serial killer. And he had killed 50 people by the time they caught him because the Soviets couldn't imagine that they would have a serial killer because they thought it was uniquely American because of capitalism, that created killers. So
wild.
But every country has serial killers.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they're trying to justify it by all these exterior factors. Well, America has capitalism, or America allows women to vote. Whatever the excuse, you know what I'm saying? Right?
That's probably it. I think that's really
right. You know what I'm saying? You're letting them vote. That's why there's murders or whatever. But it's it's just glorified. The media knows how to knows how to monetize it. Where it's there's killers everywhere. I mean, what about the rebels in other countries, or these countries that talk about the breakup of the family, right? But then you find out a man that's looked at as an honorable man, not all, but then he has a side family. What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or I'm saying, what is that?
Right. So, something that's really kind of sticking with me that you just said, and I'm oh, yeah, the irony of what we're doing right now is yes, capitalism is to blame for a lot. I think about all these crime shows that are out there, all these prison shows or true crime documentaries and things like that. And it's pure capitalistic behavior of just monetizing on something that was intriguing and now Also, I get that we're doing it too right now. So yeah, I don't know why that's just sticking with me a lot right now. Interesting.
Because it's like, and I think Veronica, I think we kind of talked about it when we performed together, how like just us doing comedy, right? Like America's figured out how to monetize like entertainment for like maybe 200 years, 300 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. Where like being from Congo, like the idea of stand-up comedy might maybe be like 30 years, 20 years. Like, I don't even think there's a comedy club in Congo. Because it's like this whole idea of like going into a dark room at night where people are smoking and drinking and cursing. It's like witchcraft. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's not anything that's like, but in America, we figure out like, oh, you have a talent? How can you make money off it? Which is kind of like good, where you can like make money off of your like a hobby, you know what I'm saying? Or your talent on it, which is really good. But pertaining to like this with murder, they're just like, no, it's an American thing, you know what I mean? But it's like, they have, I mean, we can go up a rabbit hole, like what they do to some nations, what they'll do to people that have like children that are like mentally ill, where they put them in like basements and just let them die. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that bad? Isn't that like a part of like true crime? But they just don't.
And that used to be American too. We used to lock them away in mental institutions. And then there was a huge push of reform with the Kennedys because of Rosemary Kennedy, because one of the sisters was mentally disabled.
Right.
They kind of made her mentally disabled too. Anyway, but so, you know, and then they started the Special Olympics and there was big reform for that. So yeah, we are all the same people on different timelines, which is what I think is so funny.
Because you know what's interesting about other countries, Stacey and Veronica, like what they'll do is they sweep their problems under the rug, right? So like, you know what I mean? Like, so we can make a list of like, you know, we'll discuss about this serial killer or whatever, but like other countries that will have this person, they'll sweep it under the rug. So like, it won't be on the news. It won't be, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It feels like in other countries, like people are more able to touch the person, right? Like you'll have like, I'm just thinking like in Africa, if they find out somebody's doing that, the village and community, they'll be in uproar. Where like us, we'll be like, we'll call the police. You know what I mean? Where the people will be more hands-on. You know what I mean?
Well, and we saw that with Richard Ramirez, right? He was terrorizing Los Angeles, and what finally took him down was an East LA Hispanic neighborhood.
Right. They were just like, no, we got to stand up.
They're like, we're done. And the entire neighborhood came out and did not let him get away.
Right.
And it's like, it's very interesting when you start crossing cultural and geographical boundaries.
Right. But that also tells you, too, the power of the people, right? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stacey. Go ahead.
Yes.
No, I was just going to comment, like, we're so smart. That was off. Crossing cultural and something boundaries. Gosh, we're so smart.
And something boundaries. So smart. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. When did you move out here?
So I've been here. I've been in LA. Born and raised here, but like my family came here in the late 70s. But I'm fortunate, knock on wood, I can still like speak some of the languages and stuff like that.
Oh, very cool. Oh
That's
my gosh,
awesome. What did I read somewhere that there was a big push for language, like original dialects and language in Africa?
Oh, it was Mali. I think it was Mali. Yeah. So Mali, they're trying to denounce like French being the national language, whatever, and make their, I guess, well, it's funny to say even cultural, because like there's so many tribes. So I think like the majority ethnicity group was like, no, we want to make our language our own language, which, you know, makes sense. But it's deeper than just the French language. It's more like the power that they're trying to like denounce, because a lot of Franco-African nations are still like, they still like pay France a tax.
What?
Oh yeah. It's
my God,
Veronica, it's a whole thing. Like,
I want to talk about it, because like the most that I know about Africa, well, specifically the Congo, is from reading like Heart of Darkness. And then they started talking to us about how that situation was created between the French and the Dutch and the British. And it's like the fact that it's still today, you know what I mean? Like and then I think about like my people, I'm Irish. So we had it on like a lesser scale, but there's a big push to bring Irish back to make sure it doesn't die. And it's like, yeah, because they're not English people.
Right. So. But that goes back to like my original point of just like, people are just bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like people just, it doesn't matter where you're from. Like, so, you know, we were colonized by Belgium, and like, when you find out these people have gold, they have diamonds, you can make money off it. You're like, hey man, we're making so much money. We don't want this to stop. That's not, in my opinion, it's not like Belgian people overall are like, but no, it's the power that are making so much money. They're like, man, I'm making $1 million a day. You think I'm just going to give that up so you could be like, you know, we're living in this world of globalization. So people are like, oh my gosh, we're losing our norms. And it's funny how to make it full circle with this criminal stuff where like these people or these nations, they're like, they don't want to highlight the bad people because they're like, no, we got to keep our social norms or culture in a sense. Like, we're good people. We're civilized. We're like these dumb Americans that kill people for money. And
But I thought it was a good episode ultimately.
Yeah.
I like that the women castrated him. Love that.
Yeah. You get what you deserve, man. You can't terrorize people. Like,
I loved that. And she was like, he was pretending to be a woman. Now he doesn't have to pretend. And I was like, girl.
That's hilarious.
Okay.
She put that in a Cardi B song.
I know. Yes. Cardi B.
Cardi, she make a beat to that. But that's actually really scary though. Like, I mean, I understand when women just in general are just apprehensive when you meet somebody. And you have to be, because you don't know anybody's like intentions. Like, I always think about like my improv friends, like female friends, when we're like at shows and I'm like, let me walk you to your car or whatever. Or, especially like women, you guys get hit on, like people are weird, like in the industry period, but they're like, dudes are extra weird. They don't know how to act when they like somebody. Like, hey, Veronica, how you doing? You know what I mean? Like, they don't know how to, you know what I mean? They don't know the person's like, the man's like intention. So you have to be, very, 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 very cautious, man. Yeah. I get it.
It's crazy. But Shemar, we got a lot of Shemar in this episode and a lot of side eye from Shemar. Shemar, who is not creepy. Let's do the transition better. Shemar, who's not creepy. We're really good at segues here at Criminal Giants. But I was texting with Stacey, and there were like so many side eye moments where someone would say something and he would just be like, and I was like, what is this sassy ass Shemar we're getting? But it was my favorite.
Veronica's got a good side eye.
Yeah,
it terrifies me.
It's all I do to everybody. It's like side eye and eyebrows. I'm like, okay.
No, it's definitely eyebrows. It's definitely eyebrows.
It's
definitely eyebrows.
But that brings us to our Gimme More segment.
Gimme more.
We rate him from 1 to 5 helpings, understanding he's always a 10, obviously. So then he has to have his own scale. So, good old Shemar. Stacey, you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay, Shemar Moore. You know, I like this one a lot. But I feel like it could be better. I'm going to just give it a 3.
A 3? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. I have no excuse. I don't know. I just felt like saying the number 3. I like the side eye. I like the crossing of the arms, all of it. Like, I'm here for it, but I feel like it could be better.
It's funny. I'm going to yes and you with the 3. I gave it a 3, and it's not only because of the cross arm and the side eye. It's the 2 phones on his hip. It really bothers me.
Okay, you are not the first person to recognize.
So many people talk about the double phone.
It's like the fact that there's 2 of them. And I think, and here's the thing. One's a Motorola, like the Razr, and the other one's the Nextel. And if we know anything about this guy, he is so in love with the way he looks. He probably talks with the Nextel real loud. Like, you know that guy that's really loud?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a 3. I'm with you. It's a 3. Different reasons, but I'm giving it a 3.
Wow, you guys. I'm giving him a 4.
Well, there it is.
Because the cross arms, you can see all of his muscles. Yes, please. And the double phone, you know what that means? You know what a double phone tells me? It means he has a work phone and a personal phone, which means he has a job and can afford a phone. Good for you, Shemar. And I'm giving him a 4 because he's back in purple. And we know how I feel about keeping all of our black characters in fucking purple. Season 1. Get away from purple.
What?
Yes.
Wait for it. Let her explain.
So, because we had this whole conversation with Jay Washington when he was on, and the first, I'm going to say 5 episodes, Shemar was in purple, and Jay calls it grimace purple. And it's ultimately, we decided a Steve Harvey color. And this was the time during the Kings of Comedy where like they were in these jewel tones that you're like, why is purple happening? And it's obviously because it looks really good with his complexion, but it's like, so do other colors. So does a nice mustard. So would a lovely emerald green, like, can we get him out of fucking purple?
I'll tell you what, as a representative of the Black Caucus right now, the purple and orange is excellent on our skin tone. But I will tell you, the fact that he called it Grimace for McDonald's is hilarious. They randomly brought him back too, by the way, Grimace. They
for
randomly
his birthday. They're like, it's his birthday, and we're like, who is this person?
Yeah, but okay, did you know that Grimace is, who told us Grimace was
Jay told us.
Grimace is a taste bud.
Get out of here.
Yes, Google it.
It's wild.
And then Stacey was like, are taste buds that color? And we were like, what? No, Stacey.
Because you got Ronald McDonald, you got the guy, the thief, right?
The Hamburglar.
Yeah, who should be on this show, by the way, which is just right, because he steals hamburgers. Well, actually, what's in the hamburger meat? It's probably the dude's castrated penis. I'm just kidding. But
oh my gosh, full circle. There it is.
And then there's just this random taste bud. Like what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, McDonald's, you're out of order. Oh, also, the two phones tell you he's promiscuous because the two phones he'll say it's one's work, but then another one.
His face tells me he's promiscuous.
Hilarious. There it is.
God, he's beautiful.
I don't know. Moving on. So Shemar Moore, yeah, right.
Stacey's so cute. Stacey's so great. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah, well,
it's the bangs.
I haven't seen hair in years, so I'm okay.
So let's talk about José Antonio Rodríguez Vega.
Wow.
I told you I'm very good at transitions on the show.
No. Your transitions are smooth. Yeah. But I'm in awe of this guy, José Vega. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Veronica. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. We're good. Yeah. Okay. So José Antonio Rodríguez Vega is a Spanish serial killer from Spain, just in case people were thinking Spanish, any Latin country. No, he is from Spain proper. And he was born in 1957 in Santander, Cantabria, Spain. So in like northern coastal. So this guy is interesting. And again, I think speaks to the cultural bias because there's very little information really. Like if they akin him to Ted Bundy, like the Spain's Ted Bundy, and yet how much information is there on Ted Bundy and like how many movies and how many books and any article, like you get every victim, you get everything. And this guy is like, here's 5 of his victims. The other 11, were not named, kind of a thing. So it's rumored that he kind of came from a violent family anyway, that his grandfather killed his grandmother.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was reported that he was molested at 8 years old by a 50-year-old widowed family member, which caused him to become a compulsive masturbator. He was the youngest of 6. And now we move into like actual facts. At 12, he started developing sexual feelings for his mom.
All right.
And he would masturbate while she was like cleaning dishes and stuff. He would like masturbate to her. And so that's nice. He would also beat up his wheelchair-bound dad. And at 18, he threw him down the stairs, at which point his mom was like, get the fuck out of the house. And so then he started to hate his mom. And I was like, this feels like a you problem, not a her problem. So for revenge against his mother, he started raping women. Wow. And they just said he started raping multiple women. So we don't even have a number. And also what kind of revenge is this? But he became known as the motorcycle rapist. And he was caught and so he was arrested and convicted in October of 1978. And he was sentenced to 27 years in prison. But because of good behavior, and he was like very charming. And I guess in Spain, if your victims forgave you, they would like knock down your sentence. Yeah. What? So he got out in 8 years for raping lots of ladies.
It's wild to me.
Yeah. So he was then released in 1986. At this point, his first wife left him.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes. So he was married during that whole time. And then he remarried a mentally disabled woman who he liked to beat and torture and humiliate. Meanwhile, the community viewed him as a good, hardworking man and an excellent husband. Because, yes, why not? So,
we're all just like, meh.
Right. Like, yeah, that sounds right. But I mean, we saw that with BTK. We see that with Bundy. Mm-hmm. We see that with a lot of organized killers and high IQ killers. So flash forward to August 6, 1987. So he was a bricklayer, and his ruse, I guess, wasn't even really a ruse because he could do work on houses, but he would gain access to these houses of older women and elderly women by telling them that he's going to like do work on the house or in the house for them, right? Because they're older. And also, who wants to build things when you can have someone else build things, you know? I don't know.
Good point.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Makes sense.
Complete sense.
So August 6, 1987, he went into the home of 82-year-old Margarita Gonzalez, and he raped and suffocated her. And he forced her to swallow her own false teeth, which is not a cute look. And then September 30th in 1987, so about 2 months later, Carmen Gonzalez Fernandez, 80 years old, was murdered in her home. And they didn't first actually attach it to him at all because, and this happened with a lot of his victims because they were older. Sometimes he would just kind of tuck them back into bed. So it looked, and because they were strangled, or not even strangled, suffocated. So he didn't even leave bruises. They were just like, oh, she must have just died
of old age.
Yeah. And then in October of 1987, so a month later, he beat, raped, and suffocated Natividad Robledo Espinosa, who was 66.
Stacey, let's give a round of applause on that pronunciation of the name.
Yeah, I was like, real good. Your pronunciation is fire today.
That was good.
You. I took Spanish, so don't worry about it. Can't say anything.
It's good. It's good.
And then it would appear he took a break, but again, he killed 16 women and only 5 were named. So I'm sure he was killing and raping women during the time between October 1987 and January 1988, where he murdered Carmen Martinez Gonzalez in her home. And then in April of 1988, my birth month.
Same.
Yeah.
But no, I'm a second.
You're not as young as me.
April? What's the
April 1988 is my birth.
Oh, by a year. I am in 1987. Thank you.
You're so...
Stacey's awesome. You guys are great. You guys are so great. I love it.
So yeah, then Julia Paz Fernandez, who was also 66, was raped and suffocated. And then she was the last victim who was named. I would also like to say, this is a gross little tidbit, no semen was found on or in the victims because he would rape them, usually post-mortem, with objects, which points to the fact that he was impotent. So, like in the show where the rapist, there was like a trigger that caused him to become impotent. So he started killing and using the knife, like stabbing them multiple times as the sex act. Something probably happened to this guy. And it was probably his like first wife leaving him that kind of challenged his masculinity or his manhood, causing him to be impotent. And he took that out on women who resembled his mother and his mother-in-law. So he then, with all the murders, moved. He got a bit of a promotion from being the motorcycle rapist to being the old lady killer. El Mataviejas was his nickname. And we've seen that before, like the East Area rapist became the Golden State Killer. So they'll, you know,
fancy
up the ante. Well, and they just up the ante. Like he started killing. So East Area rapist doesn't have that same gravitas, I guess. I don't know. Can you imagine?
She took Spanish.
So May 19th, 1988, he was arrested. This was almost a month. It was a month and a day after Julia Paz Fernandez. And he was arrested walking down the street of his apartment that he shared with his 23-year-old mentally disabled wife. And he confessed to the murders. They like arrested him and he was like, yeah, it was me. Wow. No big deal.
Honest.
Yeah. And they like went into his apartment and there was this whole room that was like a shrine to all of the people he killed. And by shrine, I mean his trophy room, right? It wasn't like reverential. He had trophies from every single murder from their houses. And it was like a TV, some of them, like big things too. And they, you know, took video of it and they put it out on the news, and family members came forward and was like, that's my grandma's dress, or that's my grandma's fake flower bouquet. And they were able to tie more murders to him than they thought because of their age. And they thought that they had died naturally. So his trial begins in November of 1991. And at this point, he had recanted his confession and he denied all charges, claiming that the women all died of natural causes.
There it is.
Which I'd love to see the explanation of the swallowed teeth in that case, but okay.
She
and
thought
also
it was gum.
the like, she thought it was gum. And also the like post-mortem raping. Like old ladies aren't just like sticking broom handles up themselves. Not that if you do, I'm not kink shaming. If that's your thing,
kink shaming.
Live your best life. Live your best life. But I don't think 80-year-old Spanish women in the 80s were that kinky, is all I'm saying. Especially not 16 of them. You know what I mean? You might get one.
Yeah, right.
But that's like a very specific kink.
That one, she has the first OnlyFans page, the one that did it.
I would die. I hope so. I'm good for her. Good for her.
Amazing.
Okay, so his trial begins. He's recanted his confession. Basically, this guy was seen by therapists. He's diagnosed as a psychopath. He's an organized offender. He's very charming. He chose and stalked his victims. He would gain access to their house. He'd figure out when the best time was to kill them. He took trophies. I mean, this is like slam dunk case. This is like BTK style. Without the brains to not be caught for so long. So his trial goes off. He was sentenced to 440 years in prison. But by Spanish law, the maximum that he could actually serve for any one sentencing was 30 years in jail. We saw this on an episode a few weeks ago. Bileko, Brazil had the same law, and it's been up to 40 years. So like you could kill 1,000 people, and if it's in one trial and one sentencing, you can only spend 30 years in prison for that crime. So he was due to be released in 2008. However, he died in 2002 when he was 44 because he was attacked by a couple inmates who stabbed him 113 times. The guards tried to like pull them off of him, and they couldn't really. And they were like, get out of here. This isn't your fight. And they were like, what are you doing? They're like, he's a rapist. And the guy just kept stabbing, like clearly dead. And the one inmate was just stabbing and stabbing. And it's like, what is going on? But they were like, yeah, we killed him. He's a rapist. He deserves to die. So love to see some jailhouse justice at work. So yeah, he died in 2002. I mean, very, very recent case.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's crazy to think how recent it was. Like,
right.
It really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, well, and especially because every like photo you see of him is black and white.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, why does this look so
ancient,
old?
When you guys sent me his case and the fact that they were black and white, before I even read it, I was like, oh wow, this is like Dick Tracy era. I'm like, this is 1920s, 1930s, you know what I mean? Because he's in a suit, he looks well put together. Like if you just look at the picture, like even on Wikipedia, I'm just like, oh, this guy looks like maybe a street guy that just got caught up and maybe got like the thrill of killing. But no, this is like a modern guy that could have, like, if this was in America, he could have probably worked with one of our parents. You know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah,
this is, you know what I mean? So I think I have so many questions.
Yeah, he was very suave, very exactly what you think of when you think of like Spanish men, Italian men,
right.
Like very always in a suit, smooth
well
talker.
Together.
Yeah.
So my thing
very
is
much this guy.
So there's so many questions. So I made a list and I was just like, okay, the divorce. When you were talking about his story and his history, and it keeps going full circle, Stacey, about like this cultural norm thing, right? The embarrassment in other countries of you being divorced. It's almost like scarlet letter, right? It's like that's something you have to complete in other countries. Like you get married, that's it. I don't even care if you abuse your wife. I don't care if you cheat, but you guys have to stick it through because it's like this whole thing about my family has to look a good or whatever. You can't embarrass the family name. So there's that, right? That might probably played with his psyche. The comedian in me was like, and Veronica was just like, well, you know, he hated his dad because his dad took the only woman he loved, his mom. But that's a whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
right?
so the Oedipus complex is...
Right.
And he kept saying, he was like, I'm not the only person who beats their father, who wants to kill their father. And then he was like, and I'm not the only person who wants to fuck their mom. Everyone does. And I was like, wow. Who are you talking to?
You know, here's another... I didn't even write this down, Veronica, but this is the whole idea of mental health and therapy in other cultures is not... So like here, we're so open with like, I'm going to go to therapy, right? Or maybe I don't feel
I'm a therapist woman.
right. So you're which and no, but think about this. For you to even have the confidence to say that out loud is such like, I don't think people realize how like forward thinking that is in America. So this guy born in the 50s, if he said I needed to go to a therapist, what that does, the shame that brings to his family, right? You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you're talking about machismo, Latin, Spanish, Spain, suit. You have everything together. We don't need help. We figure it out, right? So there's that. Then men get the benefit of the doubt. Right? Yep. So, because the ruling is 30 years. You said there in Brazil, 30, 40 years. So you can do a bunch of murders and you still get there. Because the idea is like, oh no, he knows he's wrong. He's on good behavior. He changed, which is kind of weird where it's like, in a good way, I would want people to be more forgiving for lesser crimes, but like something like this, I don't know how you can be forgiving. You know what I'm saying? Like if you sell drugs and you're like, man, I changed my life. I want to go become an accountant or whatever. I'll give you more of the benefit of the doubt. Right. But like raping and killing, you know, bitches, like that's not, I feel weird having the benefit of the doubt. Another thing too, this is pre-social media. And I think like, sometimes we forget the power of social media. As much as it is like it's a lot of gossiping and sharing and stuff like that, what it actually does is it brings a lot of shame. So this guy and people like him pre-social media, Jeffrey Dahmer, you're able to sort of, you know, back in the day, you can murder somebody in Chicago and just move, maybe grow your hair and go live in Indianapolis. Yeah. You can create a whole new persona, right? You can create a whole new persona. But like with social media, if he killed one person, there's some girl in Spain, wherever, that can be like, hey, this guy, put him on social media, and then it's just shared over and over again. So like there's he can actually be shameful. Another thing too, I think he had the thrill of killing. I had a cousin in Philly. One of his friends was this short guy, good looking guy. Every woman loved him, but he was little, so he used to get picked on. And this one guy that picked on him, he ended up killing him with a shotgun. And what happened after that, something triggered him, and he was just killing all the people that like tormented him. So I think this guy, like a lot of people that do this, the thrill of killing, like it's like a high.
Yes. You know I mean? So he was a psychopath. He had like no remorse. He doesn't have sympathy for other people, empathy for other people. Right. Nothing he does, like it's not wrong if he's doing it. Right. But he stalked his prey. Like he was a hunter and he liked being able to do it, and the cops don't know. And, you know, it's that kind of thing. The guy you're talking about is like a school shooter profile. Right. You know, so it's a little bit different, but
it's interesting. It seems like this is a big mix of like cultural biases and entitlement and mental illness and like the time period too, because on top of cultural biases, I mean, he was born in 1957, right? So I think too, like that big push of like that show, The Cleavers, Leave It to Beaver, that thing, you know, where like the man was the suit, the blah, blah, blah. So it's just interesting that 1, you have the time period in which he was born. 2, you have cultural biases, and then 3, mental illness makes a killer man.
Right. Look at the confessions where he was like, he confessed, right? So they set a standard of like, he was like, oh, okay, I'll start with good behavior early so I can get out early. You know what I mean? Like,
and he probably wanted the recognition. A lot of psychopaths do. There's this line in Psychopaths where either when they're arrested, they'll tell you everything or absolutely nothing. And they'll either never talk about it and just deny it really when you bring it up, or change the subject, or just stay silent. And that was Bundy. Bundy never talked until the last couple weeks before his execution. But BTK, when they arrested him, floodgates. when he was in there and they're like, we know who you are. We have all this evidence. We have you on camera. We have your DNA profile. You just need to tell us who you are. And they have video of his interview tape, and it was like 10 seconds, and he just goes, the BTK killer. And then he walked them through everything, like big talker, Ed Kemper, big talker. So they want the recognition because to them, it's the best thing they've ever done in their life.
Right. It's the only thing, can I ask you guys this, since you guys are very familiar with like this genre, is do these psychopaths, do they commit this intoxicated? Do they do this high? Do they do this on drugs? And the reason why I ask that question is because, like, for example, like I'm from LA. So Veronica, where are you from?
I'm from Reno, Nevada.
Reno. Oh, so that's okay. You guys are in Nevada. Okay. Shout out to Reno. But like, so being here in LA growing up, we all know there's like a subculture of like gang culture, but a lot of like gang members, when they commit crimes, they'll be like on PCP, they'll be high, you know what I'm saying? Because they have to get through to turn into this, unless you're like natural, like a psychopath or whatever. And that's why I asked, do a lot of them do it like intoxicated or high? No,
very few. A lot of them, it is their drug. And the higher the IQ, the more organized the offender, they will not be intoxicated or drugs, and a lot of times will live very strict, clean lifestyles, very conservative lifestyles if you look at it. And then you get the people like Richard Ramirez, who was high on everything he could get his hands on. He was a disorganized killer who believed that Satan was on his side. He was not a Satan worshiper. It wasn't satanic, but the more he killed and got away with it, the more he was like, see, Satan is protecting me. He was crazy on drugs. The Manson family, that was part of controlling them, was on drugs. Who else were big serial killers on drugs? They tend to be the disorganized offenders are on drugs.
Okay.
Or like you'll see the schizophrenic who are self-medicating in other ways do that. But no, the psychopaths, they don't need it. Gang members, those are, good guys who are finding family and protection the only way they can and need it. Right. And then probably will become sociopaths where it no longer bothers them. And there's a saying in at least the like psych medical community that psychopaths are born and sociopaths are made. And sociopaths can be made as children by their family and trauma. They can be made by, gang initiation, but psychopaths are just born. And not all psychopaths are killers. A lot of psychopaths and sociopaths are, Fortune 500 CEOs. I would say that Bezos would probably score on a psychopathic test. Same with Elon,
When you say that, is it because of their determination? Like, so that energy, I'm confused with like the grade.
It's they to be that successful. And there's like a bunch of books if people are like interested in like the Bernie Madoffs, right? That kind of crime. Those are sociopaths. You have to really not care about who you're stepping over. And there's no way that Bezos, Elon, Zuckerberg got to where they are without destroying lives in the process, whether or not they went out to destroy that person's life. Like, no, probably not. But did they care? No, they didn't care. And to them, it's like, that's the price of business. And we see that in like Succession. You're watching a bunch of sociopaths. Like, it's just different.
No, it's crazy because it's full circle. How we're talking about earlier, Stacey, with social norms and cultural norms, where it's like, oh, we Americans do that. But then think about the guy that owns the biggest manufacturing company in Congo. He stepped over a bunch of people. So now it's like, that is a cycle. You know what I'm saying? But it's not like, he's not stabbing people directly. You know what I'm saying? Or shooting. You know what I mean?
No, he's a sociopath. But then you see the like warlords in Africa or anyone doing mass genocide, psychopaths. Those are psychopaths. And every culture has them. Genghis Khan. We have all of our serial killers, our mass shooters. Yeah, it's crazy, but they're considered different because they're like war heroes or war villains, depending on which side you're on. But they are mass murderers, mass killers, and they are a specific profile for them.
I was just looking up like the definition, like the true definition of a psychopath.
There's a test.
It's really basic. Yeah, it's literally just a person affected by chronic mental disorder with abnormal or violent social behavior.
Yeah.
So I could
The diagnosis that most people would be familiar with, which is not psychopath, but can lead to psychopath, is antisocial personality disorder. Every psychopath that will present in childhood. Now, adults can be diagnosed later on with antisocial personality disorder, and those people aren't nice, and but they're not psychopaths. But psychopaths, it will start developing as a child. Yeah, so it's like very important when you talk about like, oh, he was like a psychopath or he's a sociopath. People try to throw that as like, well, that's why he did it. But not all psychopaths or sociopaths are killers. Not all killers are psychopaths or sociopaths. Not all schizophrenics are going to be violent and dangerous. Not all antisocial personality people are going to be violent, dangerous, or kill people. It's the nature versus nurture. There's like a storm that happens to make that click.
Right.
So there are psychopaths who, you know, the parents did everything right. They're still psychopaths as adults, but they are fully functioning. They've learned whether or not they care about it. They don't care about it, but they've learned how their actions affect others and how to minimize that. You know, it's like different. So I don't want to come up here and be like, psychopaths are all bad. No, but...
Right. It's a perfect storm. I also feel like...
The bads are bad.
Yeah. And to your point, Veronica, and we've talked about this on a past episode, like, I feel like that also is used as like the crutch in times of like the insanity case. Like, oh, he did it because he's crazy. Or like, he did it because he couldn't help it. He's nuts. Like,
it's so interesting because I worked in a rehab center for like 3 years. So when I read like certain profiles and stuff like that, it's funny. You made me think of that, Veronica, how like I remember a guy killed a guy at a bus stop 1 year. He asked him, can I get a cigarette? And the guy was very disrespectful. He beat him to death, went to jail. They found out he was insane or labeled mentally ill, got through rehab. Like 30 years later to the day, was at a bus stop, asked a different person for a cigarette, and it triggered him. He beat the person to death.
Yeah.
And now he's at least when I worked at the rehab center, he was still there. This was like probably 2005. So, man. Let me ask you guys a question. So what do you guys think about like places like Brazil and Spain? And I wrote this down, like giving a crime a match 30, 40 years. Like, that's very, for a country that wants to maintain their social norms and cultural norms, that's very, I want to say shocking, but it's almost like immature in a sense, right? For a government to be like, oh, you only get, because if you commit a crime at 20, come back 30 or 50, you're still strong enough to maybe continue that habit. You know, when you, in America, when you give somebody 60 years, if they come out at 90, they're old, they're, you know, decrepit, you know what I'm saying? And,
well, for me, and then I'll let Stacey actually speak to it because she probably has more knowledge of it. For me, I know that it comes from, they look at America and our incarceration system as inhumane. And to an extent, they're absolutely correct. The amount of people who are, and Stacey has said it before, it's the new Jim Crow. The amount of people who are locked up for minor offenses and drugs, it's ridiculous. And there has been obviously push for sentence maximums, especially on those kinds of things. They believe in their prison system as not rehabilitative, but as a timeout where you should be able to come out and try again. Now, I know because England had this too, and I think they've since changed their laws. Because like no one really but us in the developed world puts people to death. That's also, they think, very barbaric. Charles Bronson was a boxer turned killer in England, and he was put away. He got out, killed again, was put away, was released, killed again, was put away. And then he held a prison hostage and started this riot that killed people. And they had to change the law specifically for him to keep him locked up for the rest of his life, because that law wasn't on the books. So the case by case is nice, but again, with serial killers, no, I don't think serial killers should get out, and I don't think rapists should get out. Like they've said, like pedophiles, there's no curing it. Rapists, there's no curing that kind of hatred. And serial killers, like it wasn't one time. Now, if someone has murdered someone once, okay, what is, you know.
Case by case.
Right, exactly. It's like, was it a crime of passion? Is this going to happen again? You know, but serial killers, it's going to happen again. They've spoken to that fact. Like Ed Kemper, they were like, you know, what do you think about you spending your life in jail? Like, do you think you should ever get out? And he was like, well, I think you guys have closed the barn doors after the horse got out. Like, you should have kept me locked up when you had me. And it's like, yeah, because they're going to kill no matter what they do. But Stacey works with prisoners, so she would have more insight than my dumbness.
Really?
I teach arts and rehabilitative programming at a correctional facility.
I'm amazed.
I know. Can you believe this tiny little nugget who's like, ooh, like works with death row prisoners?
Because you're like such a joy, of such good energy. Like, but you know what? It probably works. They probably love it because
nice to her.
Keep telling me how great I am.
Veronica, I have to just for another 20 seconds. No, because it's like you are like the beacon of light that they probably lost. You know what I mean? Or they remembered.
Yeah. And I'm a big avid believer in our choices necessarily don't define our character. And so I think that, there are instances in which we had to make certain choices for certain reasons beyond our control. And it doesn't necessarily define the fact that I'm not a good person. No. But yeah, I was just kind of interested in this. This got me to thinking about like privatized prison systems, like in Brazil and like Latin countries in which they have those maximum sentences. And I kind of just started doing a little bit of digging just now, and it is rampant. So I'm wondering, like the privatized prison system in Brazil is insane because they originally started to partner with the state in the country to help bring money into the prison system because they weren't funneling funds into it. So they were like, oh, let's partner with privatized prison systems to make this an okay thing and we don't have to put money into it, essentially. And then it got out of control. And so I'm wondering, this is just me deducing a lot of things, plus also the rehabilitative programming in those countries I just looked up is none. Like, it's literally just put them in there, get them out, go. Like, you did something bad, you do take a consequence for it. There's no rehabilitative programming, or there's not a ton of resources put into that. So I'm wondering, and again, this is me just kind of putting two and two together, if like the state saw, oh shit, this is getting out of control. We're putting people away for years and years and years and years and years. We have to put a stop to this, but we still need the money. So let's put a maximum sentence into place. You can only be put away for X, Y, and Z. So I'm wondering if maybe that was part of the reason why we have these maximum sentences, is because things started to get out of control and they're like, we need help. We need to stop this, but we also still need the money. So that was kind of what I was just looking up here in the last 20 seconds.
What do they say? All the answers to your problems is money, right? But
right.
I think the reason why I asked that question is like in Congo, for example, I want to know I wonder the infrastructure in their jail system in Spain, countries in Spain and Brazil, because like in Congo, for example, I think your family has to provide you with food. So you're less likely. So you're less likely to try to commit a heinous crime. There's shame, cultural norms, all these other stuff, or whatever. But if you know, like your family that might not have money has to provide you with food, you're just like, hey man, if you commit that stupid ass crime, that's on you. I'm not gonna. What, you think I'm gonna feed you 3 times a day? You think I'm gonna come there 7 days? Are you crazy? You know what I'm saying? So that probably plays a part. So I always wonder like what those infrastructures are. Like, here in America, you get 3 meals a day, you get recreation. Like it's more structured because there's money involved, right? You can make money off of this. So once again, going back to the monetization, other nations, other cultures, where it's like, bad is bad. We're not trying to monetize it, or we haven't figured it out. So people are probably more or less likely, but then also like the police, criminal system or behavioral system, correctional system isn't as structured. So I just wondered that, because like for him to start to like confess, or people like him where they're like, oh, I can confess because I know I'll only get 30 years. I wonder what the infrastructure is.
Yeah, I'm not sure about like Spain. I know the only foreign one I really know is and now I'm not even quite sure of the country, but I want to say it's like Denmark. It's one of the Nordic countries, and they don't stay there during the day. They go out into the community and they hold jobs, and they're expected to work.
What?
And then they return on their own at night. They have a curfew and they go back to their prison cell, and they do not have repeat offender. Like, it's
crime rate
really
there is
good.
really low. And they like,
I know.
facilities in which they live in the prison system are like apartments. It's like dorms.
Very nice.
And they're really nice.
And they have a common area. Yes. And they have to clean them, and they take responsibility for them. And the community takes responsibility for their rehab. And they do things that maybe other people don't want to do, like trash collectors, or if they have construction skills, they'll go and clean up. And it's, they don't have repeat offender, but this is also a system whose education is free, whose mental health services are free. You know, they have a very different view on it, and they don't dehumanize them in any way. And it's amazing.
So here's what's interesting. Like Sweden, those Nordic country, Norway, stuff like that. Like, I like their music. They make like this thing called like trip hop or whatever. It's like a fusion of rap and jazz, right? I love it, right? So
it's wild.
It's wild. I love it, right? So like, I'll do research on these people. I'm like, why? How are these people that are nowhere near New York, LA, making like music like this or whatever? And then you find out that I think, don't they work like 30 hours a week, right? So you work like 3 days or like 10 hours. They give, what is that? You know, when a woman's pregnant and she's, what do you call that?
Leave.
But don't they give like paternity leave as well?
Yes.
Yeah, there's something like that, right?
For the same total amount. Because in America, paternity leave is like 4 weeks, and then maternity leave is like 30 weeks or something like that.
Right. So there's like this norm, and I like, why is it there? Because like, we're afraid of our criminals. Right. I mean, clearly, right. This guy's like killing people. So for a criminal to be like, no, we want you to come back into society. That's actually rehab. That doesn't even sound like jail. That sounds like actual rehab. That doesn't, you know, you should behave like this. You should do this. You should be this way. But if you're rewarding somebody, because that's all you change habits, right? If I do something, then you give me a reward, I'll be more inclined to change my habit. But then it's like, you know, they don't have a mass media where you're putting Jose Vega on TV, right? In Sweden or whatever, right? Or, I don't know, they don't make crime shows, right? Where it's like, you know, Shemar Moore, this guy sold drugs, we put him in jail. So it's like...
Yeah, their crime shows are very different. They're very dark, and they're very detective. It's not like glamorous case of the week. It's like the full season. Like, they're very interesting. But I also, well, first of all, it is, we should say, I mean, our system is fucked, but it is... Our states are bigger than their countries. You know, our country is gigantic. And that's governing is hard in that way. So I'll say that. But yeah, they don't dehumanize. They try to be like, yeah, you did a bad thing, and we're going to take a time out of your life, and you have to come here and do the work we assign you. And I think it helps to teach respect too. You know what I mean? On both sides of it. And it's really amazing that. Plus
it's easier too when you're in a homogeneous like society, right? Where it's like, so you don't have these like preconceived notions of like, oh, because this person looks different than me, then I'm going to judge them. You know what I'm saying? Is that helps out too. Because you know where my mind went to. I wonder like the cat wants to get involved too. The cat knows a bunch of killers. No, I'm just thinking. I kept thinking about like. I kept thinking about like the Chinese jail, because that seems scary as hell. Right? Like, how do they control? Like, I'm so interested in other cultures, detention or like their prison system. Like, how do they control? Because, you know, prison is meant to like control people. So it's like, you don't get out of order. You know, you don't want people to walk around and feel like, wait, have you guys heard about the president of, is it Argentina? What he's done to like MS-13 and stuff like that? You know, he's half, I think, Argentinian and half, I think, Middle Eastern. So he went to school like in Europe. Now he's the president. You know, MS-13 was like, I think it's Salvador. Like he's like, you know, right? So he's like, why am I giving the prisoners Wi-Fi? So he took away their Wi-Fi. He has them on a strict schedule. Yeah. So he's like decreased like crime in his country. So like the UN has brought him in. They're like, wow, look what you've done with your nation. Or whatever. He's just like, why am I treating these prisoners who are causing terror in my nation? Like, why are they getting Wi-Fi 3 meals a day? They're prisoners. They're criminals. And it's like the crime has went down and people feel more safe. They're much happier. So there's like this weird balance, right? We're trying to figure out, right? Like that's the opposite. That's the opposite of Sweden or Denmark.
Well, and again, it's like in this episode, they were talking about like your profiling's not going to work. We're a different culture. So it's all based on like culturally. And I know like Brazil specific, and I'm sure El Salvador, and I'm pretty sure China too, the gangs run the prisons, right? Like it's, so taking away access makes a lot of sense, because then they can't access the gang members on the outside. Like, so that cuts that off. Whereas Denmark does not have a large gang community. Shocking. So you can do things differently. That's very interesting.
Yeah. It's hard to be a gang member when you got free health insurance. I'm telling you. You got free health insurance.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Right?
You don't have to take to the streets.
Right. Like, could you picture being a gang member and like housing is like, it's like, oh, this is reasonable. You know what I'm saying? I can afford this.
Yeah.
Right. Don't get me started on like resources available to like in the country itself, because America doesn't give a butt about anything.
Do you think that plays a part in areas where there's like less crime too? When you know, like picture if I told you didn't have to like think about like paying for like a doctor's appointment, you know, and that'll ease the stress in your life. Because, you know, I mean, he's extreme, but yeah.
Yes. I mean, think about it. Like, okay, I'm not using this as an excuse for all crime, mind you, because some people just do crime because of crime, right? But think about, like, one of the reasons why we do crime is because we don't have access to a certain thing, whether that be food, whether that be healthcare, whether that be mental health, whatever, you know. Education. Right. Exactly. So if we pump those resources back into the community, back into society, we don't have to do certain things to get the things that we need. Right. And so, yes, that's a big factor. But again, some people just do crime because they do crime.
The psychopaths, like you guys were explaining earlier.
Boom. Full circle. There it is.
Yeah.
Stacey loves a full circle.
I love it
too.
I have to admit this. This was better than I thought. This was great.
We love to see it.
I learned so much. Like, I'm like a fan of the podcast. You know, because you know what it is, Veronica and Stacey. It's not like nervous, right? Because I was like, oh, Veronica's cool. Let's do this podcast. This is great. But it's like I even have my own preconceived notions about like crime and talking about crime. I don't want to put it out there. I don't, and that's going back to the whole social norm full circle, right? Where it's like in other parts of the world, they don't want to talk about it because like it's evil, it's bad. Don't talk about it because if you talk about it, that means you're putting it out there. Maybe you want to do it and stuff like that. Like when I hear stories like this, I don't even want to research it. I'm like, this is like terrible, right?
Right.
Yeah,
you don't want to. And my biggest. One of my biggest fears is like coming at something and like talking like this is again like with a biases. And like I understand the privilege that I have to be able to do this, and I want to educate myself on like the world. I don't know, but like I never want it to come across as a privileged thing. I want to learn and I want to educate myself on what is happening and the realness in the world and everything like that. So yeah. Because
just when you're reading it, when I was reading it earlier this week, I was just like, how do you even get to that point where you're hanging up trophies of people? You know what I'm saying? Like you know what I mean? Like you're claiming to fame, like, you know. It's hard. Veronica, it's hard for me to even post like a good show set. You know what I'm saying, right? This guy's hanging up. You know what I mean? Like,
are you ready? Because we've been working on our transitions. Speaking of good show sets, Blake, what do you have coming up? I'm so good.
I'm saying, I'm a fan. I'm subscribing to the podcast. I'm a fan. This is great. Next show. So I'm shooting actually my first comedy special September 30th. So I'm going to do my 30-minute set, which is I'm very excited about. I think like it's going to be a third wheel. Veronica, I'll send you. You're going to be in the British Isles.
No, I'll be back by then.
She'll be back by then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send it to you, Stacey. I know if you can't make it, I know you're in Reno, so I'll tell you in spirit. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, tell me in spirit.
Yeah, and so it'll be the third wheel. That's the next show, and like, yeah, I'm just excited. Like September 30th,
That's awesome.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, and I think I'm shooting like a short film. It's like being edited right now, so I'm like, we're just trying to work, Veronica and Stacey. We're just trying to work.
I love that. Well, make sure to send us all this stuff, and we'll
absolutely,
pump it on social.
Yeah, and how can people find you via like Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram. So my name, Bileko, Bileko Wissa. I'm the only person with that name on Instagram. I've done research.
That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you, Stacey. So yeah, just follow me on Instagram and just follow me on my journey. Yeah, I mean, I have YouTube, but I'm working on my YouTube. I'll try to figure it out like next year, but I'm focused on Instagram. So yeah, please follow me on my journey.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll definitely have you back.
Yes, please. Yeah. Oh yeah, please.
Stacey's like, one for me.
Yay!
No, this is great. I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank you. To everyone listening, like, subscribe, download, or whatever the kids say, and join us next week for another episode of Criminal Gines.
Woo!
Dun, 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 dun.